From medieval royal palace to global icon, discover the incredible 1,000-year story of Big Ben and Westminster Palace. This is the dramatic tale of fires, bombs, conspiracies, and the building that became the heartbeat of democracy itself. Prepare for the ultimate British architectural adventure.
Big Ben, the heartbeat of London in the heart of London, beside the murky waters of the Thames, stands a tower that has become more than just a building. It has become the very soul of Britain itself, its famous chimes marking not just the hours but the moments that shaped an empire, survived world wars, and continues to symbolize democracy, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit of the British people. This isn't just any clock tower. This is Big Ben and the Palace of Westminster, whose 1,000-year story of fire, rebellion, war, and triumph represents the most dramatic architectural saga in British history. The story begins in 1016 when King Canute first established a royal residence on this strategic bend of the Thames, recognizing that whoever controlled this spot controlled London itself. But it was Edward the Confessor who, in 1042, began construction of the first Westminster Palace, creating what would become the center of English power for nearly a millennium. The original palace was a sprawling complex of halls, chambers, and courtyards that housed not just the monarch but the entire machinery of medieval government. For centuries, Westminster Palace served as the primary residence of English kings and queens, witnessing coronations, royal weddings, political intrigue, and the gradual evolution of English democracy. The Great Hall, built by William Rufus in 1097, became the stage for some of the most significant trials in English history, including the condemnation of Sir William Wallace, the trial of King Charles I, and the sentencing of Guy Fawkes after his failed Gunpowder Plot. The medieval palace was a labyrinth of interconnected buildings that had grown organically over centuries, creating a maze of chambers, corridors, and secret passages that housed the complex machinery of royal administration. The King's Chamber, the Queen's apartments, the Treasury, the Courts of Law, and the nascent Parliament all coexisted in this sprawling complex that was simultaneously the most important and most chaotic building in England. The transformation from royal residence to seat of Parliament happened gradually as English kings spent more time at other palaces, leaving Westminster to become the permanent home of the House of Lords and the emerging House of Commons. By the 14th century, the palace had become the epicenter of English democracy, where representatives from across the kingdom gathered to debate laws, grant taxes, and gradually wrest power from absolute monarchy. The Gunpowder Plot of 1605 nearly ended Westminster's story before it truly began. Guy Fawkes and his Catholic conspirators had placed 36 barrels of gunpowder in the cellars beneath the House of Lords, planning to blow up King James I and the entire Parliament during the state opening. The discovery of the plot just hours before the planned explosion became one of the most celebrated escapes in British history, still commemorated every November 5th with bonfires and fireworks across the nation. For over 200 years after the Gunpowder Plot, the ancient palace continued to serve as the seat of British government, witnessing the English Civil War, the Restoration, the Glorious Revolution, and the gradual expansion of parliamentary power that would make Britain the mother of modern democracy. But the building itself was becoming increasingly decrepit, overcrowded, and dangerous, with members of Parliament working in conditions that were often described as appalling. The Great Fire of 1834 changed everything in the most dramatic way possible. On the evening of October 16th, what started as a routine burning of old wooden tally sticks in the palace furnaces quickly spiraled out of control. The ancient timber and centuries of accumulated debris created an inferno so intense that it could be seen for miles across London. Thousands of spectators gathered along the Thames to watch the seat of British power burn, while firefighters struggled helplessly against the massive blaze. Among the crowd watching the fire was a young artist named J.M.W. Turner, who would later create some of the most famous paintings in British art depicting the dramatic scene. The fire destroyed almost everything: the House of Commons, the House of Lords, the royal apartments, and countless irreplaceable historical artifacts accumulated over centuries of British history. Only Westminster Hall, St. Stephen's Chapel, and the Jewel Tower survived the catastrophe. The disaster could have been the end of Westminster's story, but instead it became the beginning of its greatest chapter. The decision to rebuild on the same site, rather than relocate Parliament elsewhere, demonstrated the deep symbolic importance of this particular location in British identity. A competition was held for the new design, with the requirement that it be built in either Gothic or Elizabethan style to reflect Britain's architectural heritage. The winning design by Charles Barry and Augustus Pugin was ambitious beyond anything previously attempted in British architecture. The new Palace of Westminster would be a Gothic revival masterpiece that combined medieval aesthetics with cutting-edge Victorian engineering, creating a building that looked ancient but incorporated the most modern technologies of the industrial age. The design included over 1,100 rooms, 100 staircases, and 3 miles of corridors, all unified by Pugin's intricate decorative scheme. The construction process, lasting over 30 years from 1840 to 1870, was plagued by cost overruns, political controversy, and technical challenges that pushed Victorian engineering to its limits. The project's budget exploded from an estimated £700,000 to over £2 million, causing political scandals and public outrage. Barry and Pugin's relationship deteriorated under the pressure, with Pugin suffering a mental breakdown from overwork and dying before the building's completion. The most famous element of the new palace was the clock tower, which would eventually house the bell known as Big Ben. The tower's construction was an engineering marvel that required innovative techniques to create a structure both tall enough to be visible across London and stable enough to house the massive clockwork mechanism and bells. The foundation alone required digging 30 feet down to reach solid ground, while the tower rose 316 feet into the London sky. The great clock itself was designed by Edmund Beckett Denison, who created a mechanism so precise and reliable that it would become the standard by which all other public clocks were measured. The 4 clock faces, each 23 feet in diameter, were the largest in the world when completed, while the clockwork mechanism incorporated innovations that made it accurate to within 1 second per day, unprecedented precision for the time. The bells were equally impressive engineering achievements. The largest bell, weighing 13.7 tons and nicknamed Big Ben, possibly after Sir Benjamin Hall, the Commissioner of Works, cracked during testing and had to be recast. Even the replacement bell developed a crack in 1859, creating the distinctive tone that Londoners have heard every hour for over 160 years. The 4-quarter bells, each weighing between 1 and 4 tons, play the Westminster Quarters, the famous melody that has been copied by clocks worldwide. The Victorian Palace of Westminster opened during Britain's imperial zenith, when the British Empire covered a quarter of the world's surface, and the decisions made in these chambers affected hundreds of millions of people across 6 continents. The building's Gothic grandeur was intended to reflect Britain's global power and ancient constitutional traditions, creating an architectural symbol of British democracy that would inspire parliamentary buildings worldwide. The World War I period tested the palace's symbolic importance as the building became a target for German Zeppelin raids. The clock tower's light was dimmed, and special measures were taken to protect the building from air attacks. Members of Parliament continued to meet throughout the war, with the building serving as a symbol of British determination to maintain democratic government even under the threat of enemy action. The World War II Blitz created the palace's greatest test of survival since the 1834 fire. On May 10, 1941, German bombers scored direct hits on the Palace of Westminster, destroying the House of Commons chamber and damaging Westminster Hall. The famous photograph of Big Ben standing resolute against the smoke and flames became one of the most iconic images of British resistance during the war. The destruction of the Commons chamber led to fascinating debates about how to rebuild. Winston Churchill argued passionately for recreating the chamber exactly as it had been, including its inadequate size that forced some MPs to stand during important debates. Churchill believed that the intimate, adversarial design of the old chamber was essential to the British parliamentary system's confrontational but effective democracy. The post-war reconstruction, completed in 1950, restored the Commons chamber while incorporating modern improvements like air conditioning and better acoustics. The rebuilding process used stone from the same quarries as the original construction, ensuring visual continuity while adding technological improvements that would serve Parliament for decades to come. The 1960s and 1970s brought new challenges as the building's Victorian systems struggled to meet modern needs. The heating system was unreliable, the plumbing was antiquated, and the electrical systems were dangerously outdated. Major renovation projects attempted to modernize the infrastructure while preserving the building's historic character, a balance that proved both expensive and technically challenging. The IRA bombing campaign of the 1970s and 1980s made security a constant concern, with the palace becoming one of the most heavily guarded buildings in Britain. The 1979 assassination of Ari Neve in the palace car park demonstrated the vulnerability of even this most protected site, leading to extensive security upgrades that changed how the public could access their parliament. The new millennium brought recognition that the Palace of Westminster faced an existential crisis. Decades of deferred maintenance, combined with the building's age and the complexity of its Victorian systems, created problems that threatened the structure's long-term survival. Stone decay, lead poisoning from ancient pipes, asbestos contamination, and electrical systems dating to the 1940s all combined to create what experts called a potential catastrophe. The restoration and renewal program, begun in the 2010s, represents the most ambitious conservation project in British history. With costs estimated at over £4 billion and a timeline extending into the 2030s, the project aims to completely renovate the palace's infrastructure while preserving every detail of its historic character. The complexity of working around ongoing parliamentary business while essentially rebuilding the structure from the inside out presents engineering and logistical challenges unprecedented in construction history. Throughout all these transformations, Big Ben has remained the constant heartbeat of London, its chimes marking the rhythm of British life through war and peace, crisis and celebration. The decision to silence the bells during the current restoration work created surprising public controversy, demonstrating how deeply the sound has become embedded in British identity and the global image of London. The tower's role in popular culture has made it perhaps the most recognizable building in the world, appearing in countless films, television shows, and photographs as the instant symbol of London and Britain. Its image appears on everything from tourist postcards to official government documents, making it as much a brand as a building. The technical challenges of maintaining Big Ben's clockwork in the 21st century require specialists who understand both Victorian engineering and modern conservation techniques. The clock's mechanism, still largely original despite numerous repairs and modifications, represents a masterpiece of precision engineering that continues to function with remarkable accuracy after more than 160 years of continuous operation. The ongoing restoration has revealed fascinating secrets hidden within the tower's structure, including Victorian graffiti, wartime modifications, and evidence of previous repair work that tells the story of the building's evolution over time. Each discovery adds new chapters to the already rich history of this remarkable structure. As the restoration continues, Big Ben and the Palace of Westminster face the challenge of remaining relevant and functional for 21st century democracy while preserving the historical character that makes them internationally iconic. The building must accommodate modern security requirements, digital technology, and accessibility needs while maintaining the traditions and atmosphere that have shaped British parliamentary democracy for centuries. Today, Big Ben and the Palace of Westminster stand as more than just buildings. They are symbols of democratic resilience, architectural achievement, and the continuity of British institutions through centuries of dramatic change. Their story continues to unfold as each generation adds new chapters to this remarkable tale of survival, adaptation, and enduring significance in British life and global culture.
Big Ben proves that true icons survive everything history throws at them. From gunpowder plots to blitz bombing, this tower has seen it all and still chimes strong. Subscribe for more incredible British history. Like if Big Ben inspires your pride, share your Westminster memories.